Hi, this is Jeff with the INTJ Equation, and today I'm joined by Lee, an ENFP. We were talking, she emailed me from watching my content, and we just kind of discussed a little bit about how, like you see on YouTube, that a lot of the mature folks aren't represented. Most of the people that you see on YouTube are younger, like 20s, 30s, even teenagers. So I wanted to show a little bit of the mature side, like how someone who's experienced life more and has more life experience and how they kind of develop in, as they age. Lee, would you like to tell the people about yourself a little bit?
Sure. So I'm 64. I'm a mom of 3 grown kids. I have 4 grandchildren. I just in June retired from teaching after teaching about 23 years, I think. And I'm definitely an ENFP. And I've known this for a long time, although I didn't understand cognitive functions until maybe 5 years ago. I just read Kiersey's book, Please Understand Me, and I totally recognized his descriptive paragraphs. So it's been very interesting for me to learn about functions because that explains pretty much everything.
Yeah, I think it does. And a lot of things that C.S. Joseph talks about, it's Linda Barron's interaction styles. See, it says Linda Barron's, not C.S. Joseph. Hope it isn't backwards. It's showing backwards on mine. But I think that's a big missing piece of typology, and that's usually something that I do. But anyways, I don't want to get off topic. Before we do start, I want to remind you to like, share, subscribe, leave a comment below. And there's a Discord server, and you could add me on Instagram and other social media. Just everything's INTJ Equation. All right, so we'll go ahead and get started with this. All right, so how do you think you've matured over the years? I mean, how were you younger, like your 24-year-old self compared to your 64-year-old self?
I think I am less judgmental and more understanding and more forgiving because I've always been a pretty happy, easygoing type person, but I was a bit of a judge of other people as a teenager and as a young adult. And now I maybe just living life or maybe having more understanding or both. I tend to judge less, I think. I hope. And forgive more.
When you say judge, what do you mean exactly by judging? Like as a morality FI standpoint, or?
Maybe a little bit of that, but maybe more just that I never understood. I never really liked people who were into rules, who were into hierarchy, who were into power. And so I kind of didn't like that. Wasn't that I was rebellious. It's just that I would, I disrespected it because I didn't understand. Now I understand that those things come from just personality type, a lot of it. So now I am more apt to just take people as they are and not judge them for being so different from me.
Okay. So like you started teaching about 23 years ago. So you started around 40, I take it. How was that like being in a really STJ dominated field, especially like administration?
Best to stay at the high school level in this situation. Once my friend and I, she's a ENFJ. She and I counted at our elementary school when I dropped down to elementary for a few years, just kind of for fun. We counted 23 guardian teachers, 1 artisan, and 2 idealists.
Really?
So that's a lot of guardian happening. Yeah. So when you get up to high school, it's a lot more even.
So you think the guardians taught younger kids and it was kind of more balanced teaching the older kids?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, elementary school is mostly guardians.
Why do you think that is?
Well, they're nurturing. They like little kids. They prefer the curriculum. They like teamwork. They like cooperation. Elementary is very staid, and they don't like change that much. It just seems to be where they congregate.
Do you think one reason for that and one reason you enjoyed teaching high school rather than elementary school was because there was less SJs? And do you think SJs preferred elementary in a sense because little kids are much less rebellious than teenagers?
Yes. Yes to all of it. And also there's more rationals up in high school, and that's way more fun for me, to be honest.
Yeah, like I told you before, I worked at a really small school for about 6 months. It was with kids with autism, behavioral health issues. I could think off the top of my head, I had one ENTP teacher, an INFP, there was an ESFJ and an ISFP, and I think another ENTP or ENFP teacher. So there was kind of a balance there. It was a kind of an interesting dynamic.
It was also fun for me to try to type kids. Some kids are really easy to type, and so when you figure a kid out, it's a lot easier to deal with them and communicate with them and understand where they're coming from.
For sure.
So the type stuff helped me in that regard.
How was typing like elementary kids compared to teenagers?
Some types stand out even in elementary.
Yeah, for sure.
The INTPs, they're pretty geeky, even in 3rd and 4th grade. They're pretty cute. The artisans.
Little troublemakers.
Kind of.
Yeah. I remember in 5th grade, I had an INTP friend, and he was just like the classic wimpy, geeky kid. Like every time we'd play baseball, he would end up hitting himself in the back of the head with a bat because of a lack of a SC there, I suppose.
And they're pretty darling.
Yeah, I love INTPs. They're probably my favorite type to be friends with, at least, I think. All right. So what are your experiences being an ENFP? Is there any struggles? Would you say it's been an easy life or hard life? Did you ever feel misunderstood?
I think it can be a little easier than some people because we're naturally pretty optimistic.
Mm-hmm.
So even though our little FI feelings might get hurt, we bounce back up the next day pretty well. I did write down and made some notes that it's sometimes kind of lonely because you're all revved up and ideating and happy, and you're waiting for someone to give that back to you. And sometimes you don't, all you get is chit chat back from somebody, or silence, or nothing deep, just chit chat.
Yeah. I'll go ahead.
No, that's all. So you're kind of always waiting.
I think most ENFPs I encounter, they just kind of chit chat a lot. Do you kind of just chit chat and find people until you find someone who has more deeper conversations?
Well, you're always hoping for that deep conversation, and you might throw out chit chat to try to snag them, but usually you can't really snag them. They're going to stay at the chit chat level no matter what.
Yeah, I think about 90% of people, it seems like you ask them like a deep theoretical question and their answer is like, how about them Cowboys or something like that. Most you get out of people's sports or the weather can be a little frustrating at times.
Well, again, I'm trying hard not to judge him for preferring chit chat.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think too deeply, too much, and I should be a little more normal and care about things like sports and pets and the weather and food.
Yeah, I mean, you can't blame them. It's just they think very concretely and we think very abstractly. So they just can't grasp a lot of topics, I guess, that we find important.
I have several guardian girlfriends, and they do take good care of me. I appreciate that.
What types
And
are they?
ISFJ, ESFJ. Yeah.
No STJs though, right? Yeah. They can be hard to handle, I think, for intuitives. I think ISTJs I have some camaraderie with. I can kind of get along with, but ESTJs, it's just, I mean, I don't want to like trash talk any types here. They're just very problematic for me.
They have a place in the world, and I understand that. And I believe every type does have a place in the world. And so I can appreciate what every type brings to society.
What do you think the ESTJ's role is exactly?
Middle managers.
Middle managers. I think it's very about keeping us things the way they were. And they're very, very pent up on doing that. Keeping old traditions alive, even if they're not working anymore.
I think my mom was an ESTJ, and she did train all of us children very, very well. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, they can definitely keep everybody, well, they can attempt to keep everybody level, I think. Keep them not going too far. I think especially like STJs kind of need a real, especially like INTJs in a little bit. We go a little too far and a little too pragmatic and a little too dangerous at times, a little too rough around, like a little too away from people. And we kind of need to keep that in mind. Like there's these rules and traditions and laws for a reason, you know?
Right.
And they keep the artisans under check, I think, as well.
Oh, I'm super grateful for that.
Mm-hmm. It'd be very, I think they're going a little too far with like this COVID and stuff. Like you always hear like these artisans like anti-vaccine this and anti-mask that. You know, I think we just need to come together as humans and just try to get past this and do what needs to be done. That's my opinion. I
do kind of agree with you on that. I know that I don't want to be in charge of artisans.
Yeah, it's a tough job. Artisans can be fun and they definitely create and build things and entertain us, and we wouldn't have structures, we wouldn't have this house I'm living in. I'm sure for artisans, you know, they definitely have their place in the world too, but it's all about balance, I think.
We wouldn't have surgeons.
Do you think artisans are surgeons?
I think ESTPs are.
ESTPs. Really?
Well, yeah, because the hands-on thing is so important. The surgeons I've met have been artisans.
Really? Guess I haven't had too many surgeries, but trying to think back. My memory is very poor because I have very low SI, so I guess it doesn't really matter. Speaking of functions, let's get into that a little bit. What is it like being any hero, any dom?
Well, you get a lot of ideas. If you need an idea, find an ENFP.
For sure. I love any doms for that. When I'm stuck with something, they just like start spouting out ideas faster than I can think, which is great. I appreciate that. It's
very intoxicating. It's very addictive. Well, it's fun to come up with ideas. It's fun to come up with 10 solutions instantly. It's just, that's what we want to do. And it's not always appropriate to the conversation.
Could you get an example of that?
Well, oh boy, I mean, it may not be appropriate to the conversation if the person you're talking to isn't in need of all your ideas. If they want the conversation to go elsewhere and you're trying to tell them 20 different ways you could build a log house. So that's what I mean. It's not always appropriate. You may not be tuning into the other person's needs. You may just be happily indulging in your own mind. And that's the problem with no FE, is you're not really caring about other people. You're just happily going your way.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm becoming more aware of that as I get older, that I need to be more FE.
How, like growing up and teaching, I mean, ADHD is a very problematic diagnosis. I think a lot of it is personality based. Starter types, I'm not sure if you're like the interaction styles, like the book I just showed. The starter types are ENFPs, ENFPs, ESFPs, ENTPs, and ESFJs. They're kind of labeled as the ADHD type, really. Kind of all over the place, have hard time focusing. Did you ever have a hard time focusing? And did you ever have like kids like that had a hard time focusing? And do you think it's ADHD or do you think it was personality?
That I don't know. I have read in a lot of the comments and videos that people comment they think they had ADHD or something like that. For me, it never was an issue because I always loved school. I was honestly teacher's pet. I was quite happy to focus and concentrate on anything. I only really, things got rocky when I went to college and started taking math and science. And then I think I just don't have enough TI. It was pretty awful. But other than that, I always loved liberal arts in every form. And I never felt antsy. I enjoyed a quiet, studious classroom. So I don't really resonate with that idea. And as far as that being a part of personality, perhaps it is. I don't know.
I think a lot of it is trauma based too. ADHD is often misdiagnosed as PTSD. The symptoms are very overlapping. So that could definitely be that could also be a contributing factor as well. What about FI? FI, you talked about that a bit. How's that like affected your life?
I cry easily.
Easily.
When other people cry, I cry. And then I just cry. It does perhaps, I know that FE sees FI as somewhat selfish. And it does definitely make one more self-focused on their own values and emotions and things like that. It also makes us very stubborn. There's a stubbornness and there's a pushback against being a team player of any type. I would rather work alone than work with somebody else, because I always feel up to the task of doing it myself and doing it well. And so I'm not really into cooperative groups, to be honest. I couldn't say that in my teaching career, but I can say it now.
Yeah, you're kind of frowned upon if you're an introvert in society, at least Western culture, I think. We were talking a bit about that before. Like it seems like really ENFPs, ENTPs too are kind of very introverted, even though they're extroverted. How's that dynamic kind of played a factor in your life?
Yeah, I don't mind standing up in front of a class and talking to them. But just with a group of adults, it's pretty horrible. Like I will not. Well, I got baptized in church a few years ago, and I had to go stand up in front of the whole church. It was horrible. The pastor could see I was about ready to die, so he told me I could sit down. I don't want to be in front of people at all. I don't know why that is, because in a classroom, I'm fine. So I don't know. I have a friend who's an ENFJ. She can be in front of the entire school.
ENFJs are very, very extroverted, probably the most extroverted types. There you go.
Yeah.
Like Oprah Winfrey, very ENFJ-ish.
Yes.
A lot of people think that it's just a ploy, like a mask she puts on, but I think that's just truly who she is, and she just embraces it, which is cool.
Effie is pretty powerful.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's something that I totally lack because of I don't know if you're familiar with John Beebe's model of the cognitive attitude, trickster function.
What number is that in the?
It'd be the 7th function down in the shadow.
Yeah.
So like you just struggle where you're talking about going through college and was struggling with math and science, like you didn't have enough TI. You're pretty much devoid of TI, more or less.
So you're devoid of FE?
Yeah. And that's why usually like INTJs have a flat affect, don't show a lot of emotion, don't emote a lot.
I like that about him.
Yeah, it's the one strange thing that ENFPs really liked about INTJs. That's just what I've been hearing a lot. Why is that, do you think?
Because to us, you guys seem like the buoy in the middle of the big old ocean.
Can you elaborate on that a little more?
Well, we're just out there, right? Free floating. And there's an INTJ buoy to cling on to.
Just because we're so very focused and very know what we want. Is that what you kind of mean?
Well, yeah. I mean, that flat affect, that intuitive mind, they're smart. They're quiet. They are calm, like all the things we want. They don't give us, they don't judge us for our expressions. They don't tell us what to do. They trust us. They trust our minds. And that's really nice.
I think it's kind of the opposite for us, I guess. You're kind of like the roaring waves and just make life a little more interesting. Just all the chaotic theories you guys throw out and just like the quirkiness. I think we really appreciate that.
We don't mean to be quirky.
I love it. I had an ENFP coworker, and just all the things that she was into. She liked this weird playlist of every song, genre of music imaginable, and everyone always judged her for playing the music, but I didn't really mind it. I thought it was kind of interesting, and just her like this one. We're talking a little bit about this young ENFP. I'm pretty sure she's an ENFP. She's like really into like knitting and stuff. She would be sitting in her break room just like knitting on her break. Just like it was really interesting,
We go through a lot of different phases. From phase to phase to phase. It just is.
So you've had a lot of hobbies over the years?
Oh, yeah.
So
if I told you, you wouldn't even believe it. But yes.
Name like 5. I know you said that you just like kayaking, biking, and hiking, which is really cool. I love doing stuff outdoors.
Drumming, poetry writing, wood burning. I rebuilt a cabin the last few years.
Really?
That was pretty intense.
Bet.
Cycling with the real intense cycling group.
Mm-hmm.
I do things usually for a 1 to 3 or 4 years. and then I kind of move on to something else. I don't know. There's so many possibilities of things you could do, then you might meet somebody and they do something new and exciting. So then you get to do that with them.
I think that's really awesome. Just so you just try all these different things and just see what life really has to offer. I think we just kind of get stuck and we get afraid with our SE inferior. We just don't want to try things because we're afraid of looking foolish or looking dumb. And I kind of bring it out.
We're very afraid of looking dumb also, but we just kind of pull up some bravery and just go for it. And a lot of it is just being able to trust the other person. If you find somebody you can trust, then you can trust to do something with them that you're not going to ever be good at, because ENFPs are never really good at anything. We're sort of good at a lot of things.
Kind of like an INTJ, like a jack of all trades, the sort of thing.
Yes.
Yeah. Back to the functions a bit. So teaching is a very TE driven. You're extroverting your thoughts and teaching others. So that's played a big part of your life, it seems like.
Yes. And also I read and I hear that a lot of ENFPs don't finish a job. That is not true with me. I have almost a compulsive need for closure.
Really?
I finish every job. Even if it's painting a room at 1 o'clock in the morning, I will finish that job. I can't have things unfinished. It might have been because my mom raised me to be very, ESTJ-ish. So it might have been partly how I was raised, but I hate unfinished tasks.
Yeah, before the camera started rolling, we were talking about kind of the duality theory of like your subconscious and developing that, like your dual side with the ISTJ, the complete polar opposite of you. So it sounds like your ESTJ mother brought that out in you and you started teaching, and that brought that out in you being in a very structured environment.
Yes.
But you did mention like if you're stressed out or you're in a bad mood, you came off really ISTJ-ish, and that was not a good thing.
That is horrible. When all your ENFP ideas, charm, energy, bribing, when nothing works with a class, you can go to be an ISTJ, and that is such a bad day teaching. You go home feeling guilty, horrible. Yeah.
So that made you feel bad. So.
Oh yeah.
Okay. So what about your SI? I think you discussed that a little bit. I think SI inferior and SE inferior are kind of similar. You're kind of afraid of looking foolish, but you're kind of afraid of looking dumb or afraid of starting things and just not fulfilling it. How's SI inferior been for you?
I think it has to do with my not taking very good care of my body, bruising easily, not realizing when I've damaged myself, forgetting to eat, being cold and not taking care of that. Just a lot of things like that. And I'm not sure exactly what all SI involves, but I definitely hate everything having to do with data, banking, taxes, paperwork, teacher evaluations. It's all horrible to me. So I don't know if that's SI related or not, but I know I don't talk about the past a whole lot. It's not that I don't think about it, but I don't tend to talk about it.
I think a lot of like taxes and finances, that's really TE driven sort of thing. It's probably not your strong suit, I'm guessing, because it's kind of fairly low in your stack. SI is kind of about like tradition, and like you said before the interview started, you didn't really like structure, you didn't really like people telling you what to do. I think it's kind of like the whip and chain, like the TE and SI are like the whip and chain pretty much.
Yes.
The ISTJ has their bread and butter, like whoosh, whoosh.
Yes, I do not feel comfortable with ISTJs.
Makes sense because it's your duality relationship and you guys are the complete opposites and kind of irk each other like ESFPs and INTJs. There's a big misconception. Some people say they disagree, and they can, I guess, that they get along and it's like an ideal relationship. But I don't think so. I think one or more persons probably mistyped.
I almost feel like we bring out the worst in each other. Because I feel like if I'm with an ISTJ, I will start to challenge them in the weirdest way, not even a kind way. And then I think I just frustrate them. So, yeah, I don't understand it when they say that ISTJs and ENFPs should go together.
I think ISTJs and INTJs can kind of be hard to distinguish from one another, and ESFPs and ENFPs. That's something I actually struggle with, ENFPs and ESFPs, kind of like distinguishing them apart sometimes. So I think,
Really?
yeah. I mean, just like at face value, if I really get to talk to them and know them, then yeah. But I think like right off face value, and I think, a lot of people don't go very deep in cognitive functions. Most of their knowledge is looking at a meme on Reddit or Instagram. I think that's most people's surface knowledge of MBTI and typology.
My granddaughter was a cheerleader. She is an ESFP, which makes sense. And she's a cute, nice, friendly, everything that ESFPs can be, normally. And I remember her once saying, "Grandma, all I care about is cheer and my nails." That's so ESFP. I don't think an ENFP would ever say that.
True. Yeah, I think just because, like I said, they're both starter types. They both, like you were saying earlier, that the stereotype, they have a hard time finishing things. They're very off the wall, bouncing ideas, just going 100 miles an hour pretty much all the time. I think that's kind of like just like the initial. Like if I'm sitting there observing them from a room, I mean, a lot of ENFPs have the challenge of having a SE demon. They just don't really know how to dress properly and stuff. Did you ever have a phase where you kind of dressed weird, dressed a different?
Most of my life.
Most of your life?
Yeah, most of my life. It's been a real struggle. And it's probably very obvious to other people. And I'm working on it. I actually went through my wardrobe the other day and tried to cull just weird stuff. I don't know why that is. I think we struggle so much with our identity that we don't know, are we like country? Are we sophisticated? Are we this? Are we that? Are we hippie? Are we, and so that shows up in our wardrobes.
So say
It's not
go ahead.
It's not a together look.
So if you were to go like into a shopping for clothes, would you be able to distinguish something that looks odd from something that looks conventional?
I would know conventional, but I would be attracted to the odd.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the problem.
I see that's why you're wearing a black blouse right now. Is that just kind of like something basic that you try to stick to?
Yeah, I tried to find something that would be super normal. Not a tie-dye shirt, but normal. Yeah.
Yeah, tie-dye shirt with green hair and.
I've never wanted to do my hair or get a tattoo or anything like that, but I definitely had quite a hippie phase of long skirts and things like that, Birkenstocks, trying hard not to do that.
Was it just like a rebellion thing, or is that, I'm just kind of getting an understanding here.
Oh, no. It's just you identify with this beautiful, free-flowing look. And I mean, I never smoked pot or anything, but I still wear patchouli. I can't explain it.
Just a free spirit, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, I want to jump to the shadow functions a bit. I don't know if you're familiar with like the shadow. So typically, like, how does your NI work? Would you say, do you have any form of NI? Does it work against you in any way?
I have a real problem identifying NI, and that is the truth. So that's hard for me to just speak on. Maybe if you ask me a specific question, more specific, I could answer it. I don't have a good grasp of NI.
Yeah, I mean, it's understandable because it's in your shadow. One theory is like the NIs, you're very worried about your own future. You're worried about how you're going to end up, worried about maybe your own health, things like that. So you kind of negate it. You might do something reckless, or you just might be overcautious, might be kind of like a hypochondriac. You might not take action because you're so afraid of what your own personal future may hold. You kind of don't know which direction you may go. That's why you try everything instead of just trying one thing. But it sounds like you were able to finish things.
Yes, but everything else you said is true.
Yeah. So like I know like the ESFP or ENFP coworker I had, like she said that she used to be in a mountain biking. She broke almost every bone in her body. You said they had something kind of similar, maybe not that drastic, but you said that you got a lot of bumps and bruises and didn't really take care of yourself.
Yes. And yeah, I don't think we're really good at planning for the future. I think we hope and dream about the future, but we don't want to think about it too much.
Mm-hmm. You just kind of like want to just see what happens, right? And just kind of go with
Right.
the flow.
We just feel like, well, something's going to happen and it'll probably be good. So let's just leave it at that.
So it sounds like you didn't start teaching till around 40. What did you do before then?
Raising children.
So you're like a stay-at-home mom.
Yeah.
Now is with we could talk about him a little bit. Your INTJ husband, your ex-husband.
Yeah, that was a phase. But we can talk about INTJs.
Okay. Well, let's get through the shadow first. Or unless you want to
Okay.
jump to that real quick.
Oh, well, we could quickly just talk about INTJs.
Sure.
I have huge admiration for INTJs.
Mm-hmm.
I love how their minds work. I love how steady they are. To me, that flat affect is super cute. I can't explain it. It just is. And I mean, of course, I like ENTPs because I like that NE they have going, but the INTJ is unique amongst the rationals. I don't know why they're so appealing to ENFPs, but they are. And that flat affect does not scare me or turn me off. It's appealing. So I have a brother who's an INTJ.
Oh,
He's
yeah.
a lot younger than me. He was born when I was 18. And so I didn't grow up with him, but he's definitely an INTJ. And I admire them. I don't know how else to put it. I have huge admiration for INTJs. They get it, even if they don't deserve it.
Like they get it, like they get what they want.
No, they get my admiration.
Oh, okay.
They don't have to do anything to earn it.
I think that's very refreshing for us because we're kind of, in a lot of ways, the pariah of society, kind of like we don't have the FE and the SI that is a prerequisite basically to be a human being in a lot of people's eyes. So I think it's kind of like refreshing. Someone will just accept us for the way we are.
Well, that FE can be problematic.
I
So
agree.
the lack of FE is nice.
I agree. I think too much FE is a little intrusive. I think they're just like always trying to make you feel better. And like I'm not even really in a bad mood. I'm just in a neutral mood, but you trying to cheer me up is making me in a bad mood. And like I'm entitled to feel the way I want to feel.
Well, and I think INTJs let ENFPs feel how they want to feel. So we don't feel micromanaged because INTJs just seem to accept ENFPs. I think they just accept our minds. I want someone to think I'm smart.
Mm-hmm.
And
I think a lot of intelligence comes from curiosity. And I think you guys are just so curious and you're so unafraid just to try things. So I think that's why you just learn through trial and error.
yep.
So I think that's one reason why we kind of just have this bond, I guess. It's kind of interesting.
It is interesting.
Kind of very opposites in a lot of ways. Complementary. I think there's some complementary and there's some conflict. Did your FI and your T ever conflict with INTJs?
Hmm. I'm not sure. I do know that INTJs kind of have boxes that get checked, and they'll check your boxes and they might uncheck your boxes. So that's kind of scary because ENFPs, they don't uncheck.
They just like, okay, I did this, time to move on to something else.
No, they just like, an ENFP is like, I like you, you're good. End of story. There's a loyalty there that's pretty strong. Whereas an INTJ, you might get unchecked by them. That's kind of scary.
Oh, yeah. I think that's our SI demon. It's a very bottom stack. So it's just kind of like we're very paranoid. Like you have the NI nemesis, opposing personality, the first function in the shadow, which we discussed. We have NE. So we're very paranoid about other people's intentions, what they want. So like when
Yeah, I have seen that paranoia.
yeah, it's very,
And it kind of makes ENFPs feel bad because there's a video out by Scott Morgan called The Two Hearts of the ENFP. And he just describes how everybody thinks they're in the ENFP heart, because we're so friendly. Maybe we look at people intensely and we ask them questions and they think that we really, really, really like them. But that's not true. There's just a few people inside our real heart. And so if you get in that real heart, you're good for life. And we're not going to uncheck the box. And so we kind of have a little fear we might get unchecked when we don't tend to uncheck.
that probably ties into your F or NI in the shadow. Like you're afraid, oh, this person's going to leave me. This person's not going to like me anymore. Kind of hurt your FI and your TE because you really like to be recognized and really loved and accepted.
Yeah, maybe that's it.
Okay. We can definitely talk about INTJs a little bit more here. What about your FE? I know you said that you, growing older, you kind of realized that you needed to learn to be more caring towards more people. Can they say FI users are selfish? Have you ever found yourself being selfish or accused of being selfish?
Well, the most obvious example is when people say, hi, big old smile on their face. Hi, how's it going? And oh, I don't tend to like that. I feel like it's a command. I don't even know how to answer that a lot of times. And I'm just learning that, and I'm kind of stubborn about it. So I'm just learning that that's just their way of being friendly. Just respond, be natural, be nice.
I think the problem with that is if you respond truthfully, like you may be having a bad day or in a bad period of your life, you say, I'm not good. And everyone's like, well, that's not the answer I wanted.
Exactly. So it's always kind of weird because you want to answer truthfully sometimes, but you can't because it's not socially acceptable just to lay out your life. So, and sometimes FE can be so demanding and, like you said, intrusive, and that I do not like that.
I think in many ways FE is more selfish than FI because like FE users are trying to cheer you up and make you feel, I mean, you may not have this experience since you're the happy-go-lucky ENFP, but FE users always like, what's wrong with you? Are you okay? And it's really not, they're not trying to make me feel better for my sake, is that they feel bad because of FI in their shadow. If they can't make other people feel good, then they feel bad. So it's really a self-serving attitude sort of thing. That makes sense.
Perhaps that's true. I don't always have a smile on my face, so I get plenty of FE people commenting on my expressions, asking me what's wrong, and honestly, I don't want to be judged by what happens to be the expression of the moment on my face.
So you have a very hard time. That's like FI users have a hard time opening up, and you kind of have that as well. You feel like you're not obligated to express how you feel.
Right. I don't want to be obligated to explain myself.
Mm-hmm.
But I know having been around many guardians and ENFJs, that FE is just really overall how they see the world and their way of being friendly. So I just need to get over it.
Yeah, I think you're entitled to, like I was saying, you're entitled to your emotions. You're entitled to feel the way you want to feel. If you're having a bad day, you shouldn't be forced to be cheered up just for their sake.
True.
But maybe I have a really
But
pessimistic view on it.
that is part of being an adult, just kind of go with the flow a little more.
I guess in the SJ paradigm that we live in.
Yeah.
Okay, now the trickster function, which I was speaking of, which like you're kind of have a struggle with TI and have a struggle with FE. Maybe that's why I have such a pessimistic view of FE, because I just don't really grasp it. I can identify it, but I can't relate to it. Is that with someone like a high TI user, like an INTP? I know you said you adore like the INTP kids, but what about like an adult RISTP or something like that?
The INTPs and the ISTPs, I also admire them because I like that deep thinking. They're cute in their own way, but it's not something I like to do. It's not something I'm envious of. It's not a way they are that I envy. And I was never good. Apparently, I'm not good at like thinking like that because I've always struggled with that sort of thing.
One big thing with a TI trickster, TI blind, whatever you want to call it, is kind of like you have a trouble coming up with your own opinion about things. Like you could believe that anything is true or anything is false. Like someone could tell you something or you read something and you believe it and you're easily fooled in that sense. Has that been a struggle for you?
Perhaps it makes me more open-minded because if I don't come up with one perfect, thought or answer to a problem, then maybe I'm willing to look at more than one. I can't say it's been a problem. I do think I just kind of don't think about it. I don't relate to that TI way of thinking at all, but I don't disrespect it. I just totally don't relate to it.
That makes sense. And you said that you kind of struggle with that in school with math and science. I think math is very TE driven, but maybe not so much science. How's that been a struggle for you?
It was a nightmare. Honestly, it was really a nightmare at the university. I gave it 2 good years and yeah, it was bad. I just don't think that way. Then I do see, TI DOMs are just very smart.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, what about SE? We talked about this a little bit, like your rebellious but very selective way of dressing. How else has that been affect you? A lot of like the stereotypes and things in the shadows. Like you could be very, like I said, that I had the INTP friend that would hit himself in the back of the head with a baseball bat every time he swung in the 5th grade. They're very accident prone because a lot of accidents, they get hurt, they can hurt others. Any struggles with that?
Well, overall, I would say the ESTP is my least favorite type because I feel like they just indulge in SE. It appears to me to be shallow and meaningless. I one morning at about 4, I walked into a coffee table because I forgot it was there, and it put a huge gash in my leg, and I was on my way to a 50-mile hike, and I managed to do the hike, even though I had a huge gash in my leg. And by the end, it was all swollen. But I'm not that body conscious. That's what I really notice. I don't even attribute any value to it. I mean, I judge it even.
I think that's one thing about like ENTPs, ENFPs with their SI inferior. Once they can get through it, they can be very tough and very resilient. High SI users are very strong and very resilient. They could take almost anything you can dish out. And INTJs, I think that's a huge weakness. A lot of people think we're like strong and superior in a lot of ways, but we're actually very weak if we burn out very quickly. So I think that's something else that kind of like we cover each other blind spot in a lot of ways, I guess, in that sense.
I would agree with you that we're resilient. Definitely. But INTJs seem tough to me.
I think we use our NI to kind of just get through whatever we want to get through, but we can get burned out very quickly. Like I was reading Dario Nardi. He was doing some neuropsychology, doing like EEG scans on different types and kind of seeing the patterns. He didn't go very deep into it, but he kind of just looked at like the first two functions, mostly the first function. And NI DOMs, NI heroes like INFJs, INTJs, when they come across a problem, they use their whole neocortex, which is the outer layer of their brain. So I kind of think maybe like we're problem solving and we just kind of burn ourselves out because we're using our brain that much more just to try to figure things out. Other types light up more in that sense when they're doing something that they're really accustomed to. But NI DOMs are different when they're doing the opposite. When they're trying to figure out a problem, when they're trying to solve a problem, trying to learn something new, they use all their brain.
Well, you guys are a mystery to me. That's probably one of the reasons that ENFPs are so attracted to INTJs is there's this unsolvable mystery.
I think we're a mystery to ourselves. Honestly, I think it's just we don't really have anybody to have camaraderie with. Like, you can't really go up to another INTJ. Even if you do find another one, you're probably not really going to interact with each other because we're just kind of off in our own worlds and not really get any advice.
You should just let an ENFP sit next to you and try not to let him drive you nuts.
That's something I want to get into as well a little bit. Like, how do we find like an ENFP if we're looking for one? How do we attract one? How do we become a friend or in a relationship with one? Or do they find you?
The problem with ENFPs is they are good at disattracting people because they won't make eye contact. They'll babble like an idiot. And that usually disattracts, especially smart people. But if an ENFP likes somebody, they cannot be normal. If they're chatting and being normal, it means they really don't like them. They're just treating them like a friend, And if they really are attracted to somebody, they're going to be an almost total idiot. Not make eye contact, possibly even scowl at that person. So I don't know what to say.
I wasn't not this young one I was talking about, one probably close to my age, maybe. I don't know. She's an ENFP. I just had like one interaction with her. We just kind of introduced ourselves and she kept saying, "Oh, my name is so-and-so." "Oh, I mean, my name's so-and-so. I mentioned that already, didn't I?" And she got like really nervous. Is that something that you're talking about? Where they kind of seem like idiotic airheaded?
Babbling. Yes, because when you think you run up against a really good mind, then you babble like an idiot. You're so afraid that mind that you want so much to get to know is going to judge you. So, yeah, if an ENFP is just talking like a normal person to somebody, there's no attraction.
Really?
Yeah. If they're babbling like an idiot and scowling and not making eye contact, there's probably a ton of attraction. It's just the way it is, at least for myself.
the same girl I was talking, we had maybe 30-second interaction. Then I saw her today and she was just kind of like freezing, like kind of looking at me like a deer in the headlights today. And I was kind of like, okay,
That would also be normal if you liked someone.
really? I mean,
Every weird way that you shouldn't be, you will be.
so you said you ran into maybe 3 INTJs in your life. Do you just kind of intuitively know they're an INTJ right off the bat, or?
Well, yes, at this point, I would say that I can discern that. I didn't know that 20 years ago. I think I do know that now. I think I know some of the types pretty well. And then other types like INFJ, I can't recognize yet. I just can't.
Probably just need some interaction with them. I do have some podcasts, by the way, with some INFJs that could be, I don't know if you've watched them yet, but that could be helpful for you and other people if they want to identify an INFJ.
Yeah, I have watched different videos of seeming INFJs, and some, I kind of wonder, is that person really an INFJ? I can't tell.
Are you familiar with Frank James?
Yes.
He's an INFP who thinks he's an INFJ. INFPs and INFJs very good.
I think I would agree with you because I have 3 girlfriends who are INFPs. And I think I can recognize an INFP pretty well. So I think I might agree with you on that.
And like I was saying before, I think male and female type is totally different. Like an INFJ male is very encouraged not to be emotional. So they come off a lot INTJs. Like the one I did with Peter, a male INFJ, he does come off very INTJ-ish, and a lot of people mistype him as INTJ. But Millie, the first podcast I ever did, she's a female INFJ, and I think they're just more comfortable in their skin in that sense. So I think they come off very different in a lot of ways.
That would make sense. Men and women are different.
Yeah, and we're not very encouraged to be very emotional, and women are encouraged to be emotional, not really think so much. So I think some types have it easier as a certain gender. Like I think female INTJs would have a lot rougher than male INTJs, and I think a male ENFP would have a lot rougher than a female ENFP.
That's for sure.
I think a lot of the male ENFPs I meet, they're very narcissistic, very manipulative. I think that's a stereotype that ENFPs get a lot. Think like the sleazy lawyer, used car salesman, just trying to swindle somebody. Would you agree with that?
Well, we're fallen, and ENFPs can be very fallen. And we can be very manipulative.
With that any hero, the any dom, you just kind of see all these what they want and kind of like their possibilities and kind of skate around them really easy.
Yep.
Is that one thing where you see like an INTJ or even an INFJ, if you were to meet them, maybe that like you can't really manipulate them that easy? They kind of have their own free will, and it's kind of hard to skirt past them.
Yep.
Yeah. And we maybe
that's why we admire INTJ so much, is we can't move them. They're like a rock.
Yeah. Very interesting concepts. Yeah, it's like bouncing ideas off ENFPs. I think it's just great.
Well, okay. We're glad that you exist.
What do you, just another thing, why do you think like certain types are more rare than others?
I don't know. I guess it takes all types to make society, right? And whether that was part of creation or just kind of happened, I don't know, why there's such a difference in the percentage of types. But I have thought a lot about that. I don't have an answer.
So like just depending on the statistics you look at, like an ESFJ is one of the most common types, anywhere from like probably 12 to 15%, and INTJs are anywhere from like 1 to 2%. What if that were flipped? What if INTJs were 12 to 15%, ESFJs were like 1 to 2%, how do you think the world will be different?
We'd have a nurse shortage.
That's for sure.
It wouldn't be good. We actually need a lot of guardians to make the world work. I recognize that.
And we'd probably have a lot of people try to take over the world, I'm sure.
Yeah.
All right, so you answered half this question already. What's your favorite and least favorite type? You said ESTP because they're very impulsive and very selfish with their SE and very chaotic, I guess, in that sense. What's your favorite type? I'm guessing INTJs possibly.
In order.
In
I
order.
wrote it down.
Okay, there we go.
INTJ, followed by ENTPs, and then INTPs, and then ENTJs, and then ISTPs and INFPs.
Okay. What are your reasons behind you already give quite a bit on INTJs. What about ENTPs? Kind of the camaraderie with the any-dom sort of thing?
Oh, yeah. There's nothing more fun than hanging with an ENTP. There's no end to it.
So I don't interact with a lot of people out in the real world, I guess, but MBTI and typology is actually a really common thing. But the people I do come across really have no clue about it. Do you find people are into this sort of thing a lot? Maybe it's a regional thing.
I've talked enough about it that my children understand it, but most people are not into it, and most people reach their limit, pretty quickly with that kind of talk. And it's not the most important thing in life. So I try to keep it, down. I can talk about type for hours, but it's usually not appreciated.
Well, I'm trying to make an outlet like that. I was talking to another ENTJ, an ENTJ, and we're talking about doing like a panel thing where we get like a bunch of one types and maybe kind of mediate in one way. Where we just kind of like discuss it, just kind of do different combinations, just kind of see what happens.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Okay. I'll definitely keep you in mind if you're interested in that in the future. Okay,
I'd like that.
Okay. Something I gotta get used to, I guess. Last few questions. What would you like INTJs or other types to know about you to understand you better, or just something you'd want everybody to know in general?
Well, that I can see from other people's point of view that ENFPs are kind of quirky. I get that. But we don't want to be judged for being quirky. Like everybody, we want to be just liked and accepted. And let's see, what else can I say? We're like INTJs. We want to be thought of as together and smart and deep and trustworthy. And we hate to be micromanaged, and we love freedom, and we want to be free. And we want peace.
Peace, like as in quiet, or like world peace? Or both?
Peace as in we hate conflict.
Oh.
So we will avoid conflict like the plague. So that kind of peace.
Okay.
So I would say we're optimistic by nature. We're hopeful by nature. We hate conflict, and we love freedom.
That's very conflicting in a way. Like you like possibilities and outcomes, but you don't like conflict. A lot of times conflict brings those sort of things.
We will run from conflict just like an INFP. We'll both run together.
I think it's the lack of SC. I think they're like, I'm gonna go in this burning building and save this kid, kind of where SE comes into play in our society.
Yeah. If we have a disagreement with somebody, we'd rather just pretend it never happened.
Like I made the comment I told you about it. Like I felt like this very young ENFP girl. I think she's just very ambitious and she wants to promote there where she's at. She's probably maybe like 19 or 20. She's really young. And like I just kind of felt that she was like micromanaging me and looking over my shoulder and trying to catch things I was doing wrong. I got a little irritated and said, "You're very bossy, you know that." And she got very upset. It seemed like I think she went off and cried and I felt bad. So I think, like you said, she just kind of avoided the conflict. But like you said, they bounced back pretty quick, right?
They do. I don't think any NFP would ever want to be thought of as bossy, but ENFPs can be very opinionated. And so that can come off as bossy. I mean, we definitely have our weaknesses. We're very self-flagellating.
I think she's just trying to use her TE to really look good and look promotable. Like she really seemed ambitious, like she really wanted to move up in the company. But I just kind of like told her like more in a, but I tell people that and I'm very blunt with them. I try to do it in a constructive way, you know, like you're just kind of bossy, you know. There's a lot of people just don't like that. Especially INTJs. We don't like to be controlled. We hate it. We hate being micromanaged. That's like my biggest pet peeve.
We have that in common.
Yeah. So I'm sure she's just young and still discovering herself.
Likely.
As any young adult, kid, teenager, someone in their 20s, even 30s would do. Okay. The last question I have for you is kind of the reverse of what I asked. What would you like to know about INTJs or another type? Something that you would just ask someone who's kind of aware of being an INTJ?
Well, the question that came to mind when I read that was, what about ENFPs do INTJs disrespect?
Probably that they can be a little too out there, I guess. Like, I think we kind of like, we need grounded, we need structure, we need like point A to point B. I think at times it's just a little too chaotic. I think a lot of times our FI will conflict and our morals will bump. Like we have a very strong sense of morality, even though we're very emotional, but we kind of have like our own value system, and an ENFP could have their own value system. I think they will butt heads there.
True.
But, you know, I think there needs to be a balance of like conflict and a balance of compatibility. I think if you're too compatible, like an INTJ and an INTP or ENTP, they could be enabling with each other in a lot of ways. Like you could be really enabling with an INFJ if you were to meet one. Like even like an ENFJ. So I think there needs to be a little conflict. I think any relationship needs a little bit of conflict. I think you need a little bit of disagreement, or you're just kind of like, okay, yeah, just do whatever and kind of just go crazy and not have someone regulate you. But it's not necessarily a bad thing. But honestly, I think that's the only thing that comes to mind about something that I wouldn't like about an ENFP. That, and when they're really deprived and they're really selfish and manipulative and trying to run one over on you, you know, that I hate, of course.
Yeah, that's bad.
Everyone has their dark side. Like all types have their good sides and their bad sides, you know. INTJs can definitely be very horrible people.
Yep.
Okay. Any other questions you have for me? I think that's all I have.
I can't think of anything. It's fun. It's been really fun talking with you.
Yeah, I think this is a great podcast. One of my favorites so far, I think. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this as well.
Oh, you're super easy to talk with.
Well, I'm glad. I don't get that a lot, but I'm working on it.
And thanks for inviting me on. It's kind of
Absolutely.
scary.
But I think you did great. I think you did an awesome job.
Thanks.
I think like compared like interviews I did with 20-something-year-old ENFPs, you can definitely see like the maturity and the lessons learned, you know.
ENFPs can be very crazy.
That's for sure. All right. Well, if you liked what you heard, please consider liking, sharing, subscribing, leaving a comment. I have a Discord server where we have discussions. And like I said, I want to do more like panel interviews, maybe doing like panel typings and that sort of thing where I get certain people and we could type like a celebrity together and discuss like typology and everybody's methods and different ways of typing and kind of getting a different point of views on that. Just want to experiment with things and see how it goes. You can find me social media, INTJ Equation. Thank you for going beyond the clickbait. Have a great day.